an architect, I'm a planner. But before I ask my question about activities, after the West Kowloon reclamation, I was told that it's actually quite a popular place. People from the old district actually went there and played all sorts of ball games. That's what I was told. Nothing was there, no iconic building whatsoever, just a piece of land. People went there and played. Anyway, my question. As a planner, I'm very happy to hear about the discussion about context. But I think we need to understand context in all its complexities. So as a planner, I want to ask a number of questions. How do you define context? How to evaluate it? And what to choose from the context? And after all, whose context? So I would like, you guys to answer these questions.
Cam, can you boil that down to one question?
This is in relation to West Kowloon? Or relation to any given project? Let's make it not West Kowloon. Let's make it any given part. We'll make it non-West Kowloon so that you'll get 3 answers rather than 3 rebuttals. And another project? Whose context? Excellent question. Whose context would be what's the client context? What's the weather context? What's the city context? What's the context that your consultants also point out to you? How well do you know the city? How well do you want to know the city? The context that we design the buildings in, I guess, is always going to be varying with each given project and will vary in any given city. I guess we've always been saying here that it's to do with the client, the brief, the weather, and all these things will always kind of come into play. Plus as well any other issues which might come along as we analyze it. The context of any project is always evolving and growing out. If we're looking at projects here in Hong Kong, is it a Hong Kong context? Is it a Pearl River Delta context? Is it an Asian context? Is it a global context? Where do we begin to start and where do we stop in all of the analysis? I think probably all of the 3 practices that we are here pride ourselves on undergoing incredibly rigorous analysis and deep-ranging analysis to try and find some way into any given project. And that's to do with context, but it's also just to sort of examine the threads and strands that run through any given project or brief that may begin to sort of influence it. So I guess we'll probably always scramble around to try and find a context and try and find ways into given projects. And sometimes that's physical, sometimes it's environmental, sometimes it's brief, sometimes it's a client. There are many different ways of sort of trying to find your way in and through projects. And I guess the context is kind of constantly shifting and constantly varying depending on where we are, what we're doing, and who you're dealing with.
I think you got it all. Well, there are many aspects when we talk about context. I mentioned several. There's the social, there's the physical, there's the topographical, there is the regional, and there is the environmental. Now, I really don't know how to define each of them, but I do know one thing, that if you take context into consideration in your design and you respect the context, at the end of the day, you're respecting the user of the district and of the building. At the end of the day, it boils down to user friendliness. That would be my interpretation.
So now really everything is gone. Now, I think we can only say one thing if you ask us that question, and of course it is our context that we will present to you, a context that we believe in, that would give the answers to the questions asked to us and the answers to the problems and the opportunities, the challenges we see related to the project. And then, of course, we're going to do our beauty context, so we will tell it with a big smile to you, and we will dress up and do that about for 3 months, I think 50 times. And we'll say to you that we are not tired. But in the end, we hope that our context will become yours, and that you will vote for us or for one of our parts of the plan, so that the other can incorporate that. What is going to be a beautiful context, in my opinion. But let's hope that we are not there yet. So I think the only fair answer to your question will be that we can and will only present our context to you, and then see who recognizes it and who feels with us.
Do you have a pedagogical advice to architects to relate to a city context? What I'm actually seeing is a lot of designers quickly absorbing the style of a firm, like there's a Foster approach, there's an OM approach to architecture. But beyond that, is there an approach to dealing with the city and the cultural context of a city?
I think there are a lot of approaches that you could adopt, and there is nothing as a Foster approach or an OMA approach or a Rocco approach. It simply doesn't exist. People that read about our designs or look at our designs invent these approaches for us, which is very gentle, but often also not so nice, because then you have to fight your own approach that you didn't invent. But let's say it in such a way, the only thing that I can advise you is that you find your own approach, because that is probably if you would teach how you look at context, as a teacher I would be silent, and I would ask you to give me your ideas and to explain to me your ideas, and I will never criticize these ideas, but I will try to enhance them with commenting towards you, so that you question your own ideas and therefore maybe go deeper and deeper and deeper and find what feels good for you and gives the right answer for you. So there is no approach that I would tell you. The only thing that you should do is go into your own brain and debate with your own brain and with all the people around you, and then you will find your approach.
I think when you mention about approaches or individual architects, maybe you're too preoccupied with the formal aspects of the architecture, of the image of the architecture. And in fact, if you look more at the contents, you would find that even within a firm, sometimes the attitude towards related to context may differ and may shift, depending on the actual nature of the building, the nature of the context, and the situation. Maybe what differs approaches by different firms is the order or priority they each might assign to different aspects of the context. And that might change, and that would depend on the individual, because that, in the end, is what we call the style, because that is a choice of what priority you assigned to each of these external factors and what attention to each of these aspects you pay most. And that is a personal decision. And that, in fact, would determine what you call the approach or the style of different firms or different individuals.